So, you think you want to get a PhD in AI. I'm not going to try to convince you to do it. I'm not going to try to convince you not to do it. I'm just going to try to tell you how to get into a school where you could get a PhD in AI. To think about how that would work, I'm going to talk from the perspective of applications and admissions first, and basically what a successful applicant package might look like. To talk credentials just for a tiny moment, I defended my PhD in computer science. More specifically, I do computer vision research at the University of Maryland in College Park a month ago. So by the way, this website, CS Rankings, it's a great site where you can view different institutions ranked by the volume of their research output in reputable venues. So turn all areas on, it kind of ranks everybody by their just general computer science output. Turn all areas off, turn just AI on, and I can rank areas by their AI, which ranks my institution, University of Maryland, pretty favorably. I've served on the PhD admissions screening several times. So I've probably seen like a couple hundred PhD applications, 100 or so master's applications maybe. This video is mostly going to focus on PhD, but maybe some of it is relevant if you're thinking about getting a master's as well. We're not going to talk about the difference between the two, by the way. That would be like a whole different video. This is just about you want to develop for yourself a strong application package to get into a good program for an AI PhD. So lots of programs out there. The advice I'm going to give is really tailored to like you want to get into a top 25 program, more specifically than AI. By the way, AI could be a lot of different things. Principally, it's going to be computer science. It could also be mathematics. It could also be electrical engineering. It could actually even be anything. Like if you're doing applied AI, you could be getting a chemistry degree and maybe you're developing AI methods that like predict the outcome of a chemical reaction or something. Or you could be like a geography major and you're getting AI to like model, I don't know, maybe geography is the wrong word, but like all kinds of things, all kinds of applied things out there. I'm really focused in this video though on you want to get into a top CS program and you want to study an AI topic there, which specifically these days would look like computer vision, or natural language processing, or machine learning theory, or maybe some kind of reinforcement learning, or robotics, or something like that. And all these things intersect like crazy, right? But this is what I'm talking about mainly. That this isn't going to be relevant to all areas of CS. I'm going to talk about expectations around like publication count that don't matter at all for certain other areas. I'm really only familiar with AI. Sorry, I kind of know the other things, but not super well, and I'm not trying to talk about them. I'm trying to talk about these, tentpole AI areas, especially theory, machine learning, computer vision, natural language processing. So with that being said, let's talk about what a good applicant's profile looks like. If I'm doing the screening, who are the people that I always see the faculty come in and admit, 5, strong accept, right? So this person went to a strong undergraduate program, specifically a program that we consider maybe like a top 10 program in the world. So maybe they went to like Tsinghua, or maybe they went to Stanford or MIT or one of those, right? One of those names that we all know. So that might not describe you. And so I don't want you, if that's you, don't get discouraged. There's a lot to this video, and I'm not making this video actually for those people. I mean, granted, I hope there's even maybe some, if you're a high schooler watching this video and just want to kind of know what's out there, maybe you can think about the way that your undergrad affects your graduate prospects. And it definitely does. But I actually personally went to, like a fringe top 100, 150 program and got into a decent graduate program. So it's definitely possible. And today I'm going to talk about the kinds of things that everyone wants to keep in mind to have a good profile, but even especially people that maybe don't have that top school on the application that top schools are looking for when they screen applications. So already, if you're not at a top school, you're at a disadvantage. Sorry, that's the way it is. But if you're at a top school, the applications people are going to actually respect your GPA a little bit, which is pretty crazy, because generally that kind of thing hardly matters, except to be a red flag. It can be a huge red flag, especially if you didn't go to a top program and you have a bad GPA. Like, people are going to look at that and they're just going to say, I don't know if this guy can do research if he couldn't hack it in these pretty easy classes. So yeah, if you're kind of early in your college life, or especially if you're a high schooler, get good grades. It won't necessarily open doors, but getting bad grades will close a lot of them. So that being said, a good application, you're going to have gone to a good school. You'll have gotten a good GPA at the good school. If you went to not a good school, definitely get a good GPA at the not a good school, because not getting a good GPA, only a red flag. It's awesome. Most schools don't really do much with standardized testing these days, so I'm not going to talk about that at all. Um, what you are really going to want to care about is you have a statement of purpose that you write, and it is important to come off as a person in that. I'm not going to talk too much about that. Maybe I'll do a different video on what's a good statement of purpose. But what really matters is the content that's going to go in your statement of purpose, and that's going to be your lived experience, like stuff you've actually done. So I'm going to talk about those things that you want to do that you would talk about in the statement. And one of the main things that you want to do, aside from being like a good person who hopefully is like involved in the community, mentorship, tries to give back, things like that. Um, Hopefully you do some research. So when we screen the profile, we look for a good school. I want to see that you don't have a bad GPA. Um, what I also want to see is that you've done some research, and I want to see what that research was and what the outcome of that research was. So it's always nice to see that when someone did good research, the outcome was a paper. Why is that good? Because it tells me that the research actually happened. There's lots of things you could say, like, oh, I spent some time and I developed a CNN and I like applied it to some segmentation thing and we took a data set, we made a set, blah blah blah. When you do all that, you say all those things and then nothing, no paper, no patent, no anything. I'm like, well, did you do it? Like, what did you do? Like, what did you do that you didn't want to tell anyone else about it with the poster or with the paper or with something? That being said, not all papers are created equal. So if you have a paper, even if it's at a bad venue, it tells me you did something. But what top programs are really looking for is that you get a paper at a top venue. So I'm not going to talk too much about venues right now because I think that's super boring. And because ideally there's somebody in your life at the university, like a professor that's done some respectable research that will know and be able to tell you what good venues are. Um, Here you can see Google ranking venues by their H5 index, which is basically how often researchers in that field cite that research. In other words, like how many people read the stuff from these venues or find it valuable. And so when we look at computer vision, for example, which is what I said, one of those tentpole areas in AI, you really want a paper from one of these conferences. That's what you want. And you don't just want to be a name on the paper at the end of the list. Ideally, if you want to get into a top program, you want to be the first name on that paper, especially if you didn't go to a top school. To prove that you can do research, that you can hang, you want to have a first author top conference paper. Envision it might be one of these conferences. NLP, I'm a little bit less familiar than I am Vision just because it's not really my area. Like I said, talk to the actual professors. They will have a great perspective on what they consider, good venues. That being said, you want to have a good paper, you want to be the main author, and you want it to get into a good venue. That's hard. The most important thing, by the way, out of all those three, between good paper, you're the main author, and it's a good venue, it's probably good paper. It's okay to be the second author on a paper that someone thinks is really interesting, because the nice thing is it's a human on the other side of this reviewing the application. If they see a paper and it's a good paper that they've seen before that they think is exciting, and they see that you were on it, and they can go read your letters of recommendation and see the professor says, oh, he did this and that, or she came up with, blah, 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 and contributed this and that's going to speak really positively and reflect really well on you. I'd say the second most important part of that, after it being a good paper, is that you're the main author. And then the third most important thing is the venue. The venue is really just a stamp. The venue helps for screening, but when it really comes down to it and faculty members deciding to hire you or not hire you, they want to know what you actually do. Most of them are going to want to interview you, and at that point, they're going to be talking about the actual work and the things that you've actually done. And so it's way more important to have done good work and to have been one of the driving forces behind that work than it is to have, a fancy ribbon on it that says, these people liked that work. That being said, targeting a top conference, coming up with the kind of research that would get into a top conference is a great filter for you and your faculty mentor to apply to your project to make sure that it's going to be good. So that's a very long-winded way to say, try to get a top paper, try to be the main person. It doesn't have to be the first paper you ever do. Maybe you learn to do research by working with a more senior student and being a contributing author on their paper. That's good research experience too. And if that's all you have, I'm not saying don't apply. So your strongest application profile, like I said, good school, like top school, good GPA at top school, or at least not a bad one. Good research experience, meaning a paper that you've published, but being the second author on the paper, not the end of the world. It being a second tier venue, not the end of the world. It not being good work, hope they don't notice, I guess. I would say that's not as good. But yeah, ideally you have the publication, which for some point speaks for itself. Because aside from the publication speaking for itself or for you, the last part of your application package that I think really matters is going to be those letters of recommendation written by typically 3 members of faculty at, it actually doesn't have to be your university. They could be from other universities as well. Faculty members that have worked with you before, that know you, that know the kind of work you do, and that are willing to speak to your potential to be a good researcher. Because the goal of these letters, and this is where I want you to reframe how you think about this PhD application process especially. You are trying to convince a top professor at a top school to hire you. That's what's happening. You want a job as a PhD student. And this isn't like working at McDonald's. Heck, it's not even like working at Meta. Working at Meta, there's the expectation that if you don't do well, they can get rid of you. Sure, if you don't do well in the PhD, they can get rid of you too. It's a bit harder though. Takes a little longer. Granted, there's bad things you could do and just get kicked out. But generally, they go into it with the mindset that they are hiring you for 5 to 7 years. If you're a PhD applicant, they're committing to you. If they're going to take you into their lab, it's not fun for them to get rid of you, and it's also not easy for them to get rid of you. So they what they want to look for in your application, and when they're reading letters from their peers, from other faculty members, is other faculty members being able to speak to your ability to do good research in their lab. I really don't want you to worry too much about how those letters ought to be written. That really ought to be the responsibility of the faculty members writing them. They might ask you to write a draft. Maybe I'll make a video talking about what you should do if they ask you to write a draft. By the way, the answer is just write the draft. Do what they say. But there's ways you can do it well and ways you can do it poorly. We can talk about that another time. I'm mostly going to talk about what you can do in order to make sure that that letter is going to have good stuff in it. And the thing you want to focus on is at least one of those 3 letters, because like I said, there's 3. At least one of them, hopefully, is a professor that you have done actual good research with. Like I said, ideally that's a publication. But even if it's not a publication, as long as it's research that that faculty member thinks is good, even if things didn't work out, they can say very good things about you and about your capabilities, as long as they know what they're doing. At least they'll be able to say lots of things about how they can comment on your work ethic. They can comment on how you generated ideas. They can comment on your ability to iterate. They can comment on your growth, about your trajectory. They can compare you against students that they've had in the past. And so there's all kinds of things that they can do that can make you sound good. So one of those letters, you really want to be a good research letter. And honestly, out of the 3, having another good research letter is just even better. I do want to caution you though. If you go into the process saying, I'm going to, well, he said more than one good research letter is great. I'm going to work with 2 or 3 faculty members. Beware spreading yourself too thin. To get a good letter saying you do good research, to do good research, you need to work for a good amount of time focused on a very specific problem. If you're working on 5 different things at once, you're probably not going to do very good work on any of them. And you're not going to get a single good letter. You're going to get a lot of letters that speak about you in vague terms without being able to endorse any particular aspect of you because they just don't know it. You didn't do good work with them. So beware, especially as you get later on in your undergraduate. Don't spread yourself too thin. Don't worry too much about the GPA. Like I said, bad GPA, red flag. But I didn't say GPA has to be perfect. A 4.0 can be your enemy as you're approaching this process because grinding that extra several hours for another point on that exam could stop you from grinding another several hours to get significant progress made in your research. And at this point, the later you get as you transition to junior and senior year is really when you want to start being able to get that paper out. So junior year, by the way, is when you want to hunker down and say, okay, I'm going to work on getting finding a faculty member to mentor me to do research. So that can look like a lot of different things. And we'll talk about that in a minute. First, though, just to round out the letters, your other letter writers typically are going to look like maybe you were a teaching assistant at some point. Maybe you volunteered to serve on some committee and work with the faculty member that was overseeing that committee. If that doesn't describe you and you're earlier on in your undergraduate life or you're not even in college yet, keep that in mind. You want to do these things. Get involved in leading your local ACM chapter, get involved in the student council, get involved in these different things where you'll have real face time with faculty that they can learn your name and put it to the face and learn attributes and things to say about you that are nice. Try not to do it in just a self-serving way because I'm telling you it helps with your application. Try to do it because you care about service. Try to do it because you want to get to know people and be social. But these are things that will help when it comes time to have applications. But hopefully your other two letters are faculty members that know you personally. You work for them as a TA, or maybe you took their course, but you were a participant in their course. And I promise you, if you are putting effort into your course, you do good projects, you go to office hours, you ask questions in the class, you answer questions when the professor asks them through the class, even if they don't remember you, like as in you're sitting in their head, when you show up again, something clicks and they'll be able to say more about you than nothing. And a lot of the time, I promise they actually will just straight up remember you. It is memorable when students actually participate, contribute, etc. I can say that as someone that's taught recitation, for example, or even as someone that's just given substitute lectures for courses I TA'd. I remember students that were actually engaged, that came up to me after the class to ask questions, that had interesting projects that they worked on that were actually good. And so that brings me back to what I said before. I was going to talk to you about the key thing is, okay, you said I need a good GPA. I know how to get good grades. You said, I want to get good letters from other professors. Okay, I get it. Like I'll try to TA or I'll try to do this or try to do that. But how do I get into research, right? Like that's kind of hard. So the thing is you just need to ask. Asking can take a lot of forms. Kind of on the ground floor, the worst form is like a cold call or a cold email where you just reach out to that faculty member and you say, hey, Dr. Srivastava, hey, Professor Srivastava, I saw your website, or I found you in the faculty directory, and I saw that you do research in computer vision, and I really want to work with you. How do I do research with you? Like, I don't know. Ask ChatGPT to write the letter for you. Proofread it, but like, doesn't matter exactly what it says. Cold email. That's your bottom floor. It's better than nothing. That's actually how I got my first research experience in my undergraduate. I sent emails to all kinds of profs. Pretty much everyone told me no. I hadn't even taken the ML course yet, which tons of prereqs at my undergrad. But they're like, oh, have you taken this course? I said no. They're like, okay, no. So I just sent email after email after email until someone said yes. So that is ground floor, but that's also maybe your bread and butter is just asking people. Don't just limit yourself to faculty. You can also ask their PhD students or their postdocs as well. Are you looking for an undergraduate? I know these things and I hope to learn more about this thing. I saw you do research in this. It looks interesting. I'd love to learn more. Do you have time to mentor me? Some people will tell you no, and be ready to be told no, and be ready to know that no means no, and leave them alone once they tell you no. But don't be afraid to reach out in the first place. No one's going to be offended that you're asking them a question, as long as you're polite. That being said, what's above the ground floor, right? I said that's like the most basic, probably the lowest odds of success. Worked for me, but it obviously took, I probably reached out to like 5 or 6 or 7 people before I got a yes. So above the ground floor, you have professors whose courses you've taken. Like someone whose course you're taking right now, or maybe someone whose course you just took. So if you're interested in AI, try to take Intro to Data Science, Intro to Artificial Intelligence, Intro to Machine Learning, Intro to Deep Learning. Take those, computer vision, natural language, those things. Take them ASAP. As soon as you possibly can, take those courses, put in time, ask questions, go up to the professor after class, introduce yourself, talk to them, say, I'm interested in doing research. Is there any way I can work with you? Maybe don't pop that question immediately. Build a rapport, and then later in the semester ask the question. But build that relationship and get to know them, get to know their interests. See if that's someone you might want to work with, and then when you're ready, you can ask. But those are great people to ask. Professors whose courses you've actually taken that can see, hey, their work is actually good. A tier above that, but in a similar tier, is in those courses, a lot of the time you'll do projects. And one way to get to work with the professor is just do a great project. Talk to the professor about the project. Let them know, hey, we want our project to be like research quality. This is what we were thinking of. Do you have any like feedback or recommendations we want to try? And for the most part, in my experience, they'll be willing to try to steer you in directions that they think are interesting to them. And if you put in work and you do a good job, you could work on that project after the course under their supervision or under the supervision of one of their students. And that's an opportunity to get great time. And even if that doesn't go well, that is going to be way better of a letter of recommendation than the generic, oh, they took my class and got an A. Oh, they took my class and they were really interested in basketball, so they did this project and they came up with all this and they asked me for feedback and then they had all these fresh ideas, blah, blah, blah. Like it's not a great letter, but it's better than, the bare bones basic. So that's sort of getting above the ground floor, like a professor that you've, taken these courses with or whatever. Kind of getting above that, I think, are more formal experiences that you actually apply to, like undergraduate research experiences, REUs, that you can apply for probably at your university or even to go visit at other universities. These are where some faculty member has put forth some kind of proposal that's formally up there. You can apply to, you can submit to, get accepted to, and then you can pay or they can pay, and you can go attend for a bit. Um, that's going to be great because there's a formal commitment. You know what you're getting into. They know what they're getting. Um, and it's also a chance where you know you're going to get at least some connection. If you put in good work, it should be easy. Just put in the work and you should be able to get at least a decent letter, and you'll certainly have some research experience. And so that's definitely a lot more straightforward than, just asking kind of the informal, hey, can I work with you? Which can take a while. It can be a bit like iffy as you work it up over time. Talking about to the professors, by the way, a really nice thing. Every school I've been at least has two different ways to help undergrads do research. One of them is they offer research for credit, and the other is sometimes faculty members can pay undergraduates to do research. If I were you, I'd recommend being open to both of those, but that's really just in the ballpark of the faculty member you work with to decide, which one of those would be right for you. And for the sake of your applications, in my opinion, doesn't matter much which one it is. In the letter, the faculty member talks about doing research with you. They don't talk about whether they paid you or whether the school gave you credits. And in your letter, you don't talk about, oh, by the way, they paid me money to do research. No, you would just talk about the actual research you did. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's my main advice. Starting from freshman year, you can be planning to take those AI courses as early as you can, talking to those faculty members, looking for those REUs, looking for other experiences you can apply for to get experience doing research directly with faculty or under the supervision of their PhD students, to be able to get that good research experience to go along with your hopefully not bad GPA. And honestly, I know I've been talking for 20 minutes, but it's pretty simple. Don't do bad in your classes. Don't spread yourself too thin. As you get towards your junior year, try to focus, find something that you think is interesting, and find someone that is willing to mentor you and supervise you in doing a good research project. And hopefully you get a paper, and hopefully that makes your profile strong enough to where you have at least a fighting chance at one of these really good PhD programs.